Hello and welcome, my merry band of OSATers, to this, the 71st edition of the Sockmatician podcast episode, and no doubt, I imagine, the last of this year. What a year it's been. So welcome. Are you all ready for Christmas? I'm recording this on the 22nd of December. It's my sister, Sockmatician's birthday today, so well wishes, I'm sure, will be sent from all over the globe as soon as everyone hears that, because it seems that she's becoming quite well loved in the knitting industry herself, and quite rightly so. She's a remarkable human being and I adore her. So it's her birthday today. Do you have a birthday near Christmas, or do you know anyone who does? Because I think it must be quite difficult growing up as a child when the two things are quite so close together. My birthday is the 30th of June, which is exactly 6 months. It's the very last day of the first 6 months of the year. So with Christmas coming right at the end of the year, it's very much spread out. So for me as a kid, I only had to wait 6 months for presents. That's all I cared about. Whereas my sister, she has to wait 362 days after Christmas until her birthday. And worse, people used to sometimes combine the two and would give her a joint birthday and Christmas present. Now, adult logic says that that's okay, because you think, right, we'll combine it and we'll spend more money and we'll get a bigger present and she'll be delighted. Child logic says, I've only got one present. He got two, I got one. That's not fair. So we had a rule in our family. We were never allowed to really get on with Christmas until after Sam's birthday, and that included decorating the house. Back in the day, the Christmas decorations in our house, it was everywhere. We had a tree that was allowed to go up in, I don't know what that was. The Christmas tree was allowed to go up in early December, and that was okay because we were approaching the Christmas season, but that wasn't going to then take over the house and overshadow Sam's birthday, because if we'd put the trimmings up, and do you remember those old paper things, you'd concertina up, they were like very fragile tissue paper, and you'd open them up and they just had like, I don't know, like when you cut out a snowflake, you know, it's got holes in it and stuff, but they would be long and they would be like an orange section, a red section, blue section, and they'd go for miles. We had them for years. I've never seen them in the shops, never seen them before or since. They just existed only in our house, it would appear. Do you know what I mean? They're really hard to describe. They were like a little pad of paper. It seems to be about that thick, but the paper was so thin and they were all stuck together in certain ways that you could literally stretch them across the room. So we had those all the way, festooning the whole sitting room, the living room ceiling, and balloons. Of course, we would get balloons and we would blow them up and tie them together, like in bunches of three, and there'd be three in all the corners of the room, and wherever the festoon things met as a nexus, there'd be balloons hanging down. And then we had a set of card strings. These were special Christmas card strings. I say special because the twines of the plies, I guess, of the string. It's a very soft string. It wasn't like kitchen string. One of them, in one would be green, and so you'd have a white string with a green spiral in it, and in some of the others we had a red spiral going through, and they came with a little set of tiny little clothes pins, really, not pegs. They weren't the ones that hinge. They were the ones that like the clothes pin that just sort of you make a dolly out of, and it just sits on the line with the clothes width trapping it in. They were like that, but teeny tiny, and some were red and some were green. And so what you did is you got a drawing pin, and you tied a little loop at the top of the string, and you stuck it in just below the ceiling, and it would hang down the wall, probably near to the floor, and then you'd use the pegs and you would peg the Christmas cards onto a string. So you'd have like these vertical columns of Christmas cards. And back in the day, of course, pre-Facebook, pre-internet, pre-texting, pre-email, pre-any of that, Christmas cards were, we could just get thousands. And I'm telling you all of that because it was very, very 1970s, 80s, and it was very of its time, and it's really nostalgic for me to think back. As I've been talking to you, I've been really imagining. I hadn't even thought about those little paper decorations probably for years. So anyway, the crux of that story was that we would not be allowed to do any of that other than the Christmas tree itself until after Sam's birthday. So tomorrow, the 23rd of December, it was like, all systems go, we've got to get everything ready for Christmas itself. Halcyon days, really. Another bad thing about having a birthday at Christmas time, I would imagine, is that if I got a bike for my birthday, and there were a couple of occasions when I did, we were lucky enough to be able to have presents like that sometimes. It was June, it was sunny. I could go out and ride my bike. When Sam got a bike, it was December, it was freezing, there was snow on the ground, she couldn't ride it for months anyway. And look at the weather just for parties and things. My parties were all in the garden with barbecues, and Sam's all huddled up in the living room because we didn't have central heating or anything, we just had a little gas fire. Oh, poor me, I'm saying, you know, it sounds like I'm saying what a dreadful childhood I had, but I do remember in one of the houses, the first house I remember growing up in, which we left when I was about 7, but my earliest memories, in the winter, no double glazing or anything, and no central heating upstairs, at all. So in the mornings when it was really, really cold, there would be the patterns of ice in the condensation on the inside of the window pane, and you'd have to sort of like either scrape it off if you wanted to see out, or you go, and with clouds of steam, you could see the ice crystals melting away. But it was freezing to get out of bed. So my mum, bless her, she always used to go down into the living room and put the one of those gas fires that have the little waffles in it. Do you know what I mean? The little white waffles that heat up. You can have 1 or 3 of them on. I don't know why you couldn't have 2. It seems to be 1 or 3. And she'd set that up, and she'd put a little clothes horse in front of it with our school uniforms on. So we would leap out of bed, freezing, dressing gowns on, race into the bathroom, have a wash and clean our teeth. It's a bath, pre-puberty. Run straight downstairs into the living room, which was the only room that had any heat in it. And we put our lovely warm school uniforms ready to go out the door. It's a bit different nowadays, isn't it? Life in general. I'm rather glad it is. I can't bear being cold. I really, really can't bear being cold. You'd think, actually, that I'd have hardened to it, having come from that kind of start. We weren't by any means poor. It was just how it was, really. Maybe we were poor. Maybe no one ever told me I was poor. I don't really care. That was life. There was a lot of love, and that's all that matters. So last night, I'll get on to some knitting stuff in a minute. You know, last night was the very good friend of mine, Mark, who is the father of my goddaughter, Poppy. I went to drama college with her mother, Lisa, who is one of my dearest, closest friends, and Mark and she have been together for over 20 years now. So I've known Mark at least 20 years, probably a bit more. And it was his 50th birthday last night, and it came as a bit of a shock. Not to him, I mean, he's been expecting it. It came as a bit of a shock to me, really, because I think he's the first person of my contemporary friendship circle, somebody that feels like my age and my generation, to turn 50. I've got 5 years left, 4.5 years left. I don't feel 50. I don't know what 50 feels like. I feel like Nathan, and Nathan's always felt like this. But I look at, yes, there's grey in the beard, and there's a little bit of silvering at the sides, which you can't really see because I cut it short, and that's not why. But it's really, it feels like a big number. It feels like something I have to get used to seeing happening around me, because being a June baby, even my friends in my school year, in the same school year as me, they'll be turning 50 before I do. Benjamin, my husband, is the baby. His birthday is not until sort of second week of August. So can you imagine, he never had a birthday at school. So all of his birthday parties were when all of his friends were probably away on their summer holidays somewhere and not able to come. And he never got to turn the new numbers. He was always younger than everybody else in his class. I wonder if that held him back any. He's emotionally stunted, I should think. Mathematically challenged. Not very bright. I'm lying, of course. He is composing up in the living room, and he's working on a piece for the synagogue where he sings, which is going to be it's a kedusha. If we've got any Jewish people who are listening who understand these words, it's just a sound to me, I'm afraid, but I know he's working on a piece which will be called the kedusha, which is part of the synagogue services in the shul that he sings at every I don't know if the Kaddish is part of it every week, but whether it's part of a special occasion, but that's what he's writing at the moment for 4 voices male choir. And we're a little bit stressed. I probably shouldn't be taking the time to record this, so I hope you appreciate it. It is so close to Christmas. We're hosting this year for the first time ever. Ben and I have been together for 17 years and a bit more, and we've never lived in a house which is large enough. This flat is, it's really odd. It feels much larger than the place we were in for the previous 14 years up until June this year. It's got a second bedroom, well, this room here that I'm in, this would be the second bedroom if it weren't my study and knitting den, but the bedroom is smaller than the other bedroom, and the living room's almost exactly the same size. Like, the dimensions in the layout is very similar. We've replaced one flat for another, but the living room is obviously the place where you can host and have dinner and things like that. It's 2 feet shorter than the other one, but 2 feet wider, so it's pretty much exactly the same space, and yet it feels much bigger. I don't know why that is. It just feels like we weren't able to do this at the other place. We had no table there anyway. We do have a table here at least. And I know that's a fixable problem, but it just never seemed possible. So Christmas for us, me particularly, for many years, has always been about travelling around the country. It's a 2 hour 45, 3 hour drive to my sister's house and where my mum lives. It's about a 2.5 hour drive down west to where my dad lives. And usually Christmas has been at my mum's or at my, well, I usually stay with my mum, but Christmas would be at Sam's. And this year, we thought, when we moved in, we had all the family around. It was my birthday, funny enough, my birthday yesterday, it's my sister's birthday today. We were talking about mine when we were moving in. And we just felt, even as we had all our family with us and they were helping us to bring all the large pieces of equipment over and furniture from the other flat, and it seemed like we could just do it. And we said, can we do Christmas this year? And it seems to be a bit fraught sometimes, not just because we've got lots of things to do. It's something different. It's not something that my family usually does. It's come to me. It's never happened before. And it's in a different part of the world. So the downside is I won't be seeing my nieces and nephew and their partners and my great niece Renee. That's a shame because Becky, who's Renee's mum, she and Aaron live up in Bolton. And it's a long way away. That's a couple of hours further north than my sister. It would take about 5 hours to get here, and I wouldn't put them through that with a 6-year-old in the back of the car. 7. Renee's 7. But it's, so that's really sad. I'm really pleased to be able to do it because it's sort of my way of thanking my family for looking after us over the last however many years and imposing on their hospitality. Not that it is when it's family, but you know what I mean. It's like Christmas doesn't happen easily or by accident. It takes effort and preparation, and this is the first chance we've had to be able to say thank you to my family for doing it for us for all those years. But it is a break with tradition, and that does come with sort of various, I don't know, anxieties and frustrations and awkwardnesses that probably don't need to be there. Ben and I were talking about it today and just thinking, why do we, as a society, maybe it's just my family, but why do we try to complicate things that don't need to be complicated? I really wanted, my whole ethos for setting up this Christmas was so that people could just relax, and it's not going to be very formal because we're not very formal people, so there's not going to be any ceremony. It's just going to be arrive, eat chocolate and drink whatever you want to drink, and then we'll eat a dinner together, and it will be a traditional Christmas dinner. We've got vegetarians and non-vegetarians, so it's all mucking in. And then shove it, clear it all away, or leave it in the kitchen until tomorrow, and we can do it on Boxing Day. It's not a problem, and just sit and relax. But of course, when you've got blended families, and mine is a very blended family because there's my family and there's Ben's family, but there's also various sections of my family because my parents have not been together since I was 10 years old. And and various offshoots, and now nieces and nephews, and my sister and her new partner, can he come? And yes, thankfully. So there's lots of moving parts. And that, of course, means that there are people going to be there who don't know each other very well, from different sides of the family. They all know us, but they don't know each other. And then what about presents? So today, I've sent out an edict. It might have come across as a little stampy footy. It wasn't meant to. It was just because I knew that people were starting to stress a little bit about, and are we getting something for so-and-so? And are they expecting a present? No one expecting presents. Don't buy for anybody you don't know. So I literally sent out a message today to my mum, Ben's parents, and my sister, and Ben's brother, who's joined us as well, and said, right, the rule is nobody from my extended family is allowed to bring or buy any presents for anyone from Ben's extended family. I mean, if my sister, for example, were going to give a present to Ben, that's fine, but not to Ben's brother, because that's just like too far removed. And Christmas is expensive, and it doesn't need to be. And then there's obligation and responsibility, and everyone just feels really frazzled and stressed, and it's not fun before it's even started. So I said, even if, I know it's only 3 days before Christmas, even if you've already bought some things, please leave them at home. Please. I know what's going to happen. Somebody's going to break the rules. Oh, it was just a little thing. I just wanted to give you a little token. And it's going to make everyone else feel awkward because they abided by the rules. There is no way to win this one. I've done my best. We shall see. Tomorrow morning, before Christmas even starts, tomorrow I am heading up to... Am I in focus? I'm not sure. I hope so. Otherwise you've been watching through this for the last 10 minutes. Tomorrow I am going up to Peterborough, which is about an hour and a half drive north from London, and I've got to set off really, really early. I'm not looking forward to it at all. I've got to be there at 8:30 in the morning, which probably means getting up about... I should probably leave about 2 hours to get there just in case, so leaving the house at 6:30, getting up at 5:45 or something horrible like that. And driving up there because I am hosting for Lisa and Mark, actually. They're the people who I do quite a lot of the corporate work that I do outside knitting and singing. And I am hosting, facilitating, presenting, call it what you want, a stop motion animation workshop for the sort of end of year Christmas activities for a specific company. And I love doing these things. They're really, really brilliant. We have animation software on iPads, and we give one to each team, and we give them paint and overalls and a white canvas and loads of plasticine, and we say, make a movie. This is stop motion animation. If you don't know what that means, think of Wallace and Gromit, or if you're my age in English, Morph. And it's sort of the stuff that where you literally, you just, for anyone who doesn't know how film works, it takes, depending on your hardware, but it takes up to 50 different frames a second, and they show them very quickly, and that's what it gives the illusion of movement. Patronising, I know, but some people won't have known. And stop motion animation is where you take one frame at a time, you move something, you take another frame, you move something again, take it. So you're doing all the individual moves, giving the illusion when you play it back that the thing is moving. And a lot goes into it. So we only work at 12 frames per second, and that still means you have to take 12 separate photographs without moving the camera, hopefully there's no wobbles or anything, 12 separate photographs, and when you play it back, that film will last 1 second. But doing that takes so long. I mean, I know the guys at Aardman Animations who make the Wallace and Gromit films, they can be working for 6 months on like 2 minutes. It can take forever. And everything has to be done in sequence. There's no editing that can be done. So they have to, it's an exercise in planning. But, I know that sounds like really technical. Actually, it's not. It's just a load of fun. It's a load of adults becoming, sorry, my light's gone off. Sorry about this, let me put my light back on. The E doesn't work. There's an E in my password. Sorry about that. How terribly dull for you all. Because, do Do you remember a couple of episodes ago, I was using the donations money that people had kindly sent through my Ko-fi page to, I bought a light for filming with. It doesn't work anymore. It's stopped charging. I have to send it back. It was £145. It's a lot of money. I'm glaring over there at it, so I'm really annoyed with it. So at the moment I've got a lamp in front of me causing shadows, which I don't like. But to get some white light here, I've got my MacBook screen on its just on a blank white page, which I filled the screen, and I've got it on its brightest screen setting. So when the Mac goes to sleep, everything goes dark. Podcasting's not easy, you know. Can't remember what I was talking about. Oh yeah, the animation. So it turns a group of, they could be anything from like mid-20s up to 60 or something and more, depending on who the group is. It turns people back into children because you're making people and animals and things out of plasticine. Other modelling clay brands are available. And paints that come in, like squirty paint that comes in a washing up liquid bottle, just like it did when you were at school. And it's messy and it's fun and there's no time to do anything, so you just really, really have to get on and make quick decisions and do it. And at the end of it, there's a film. And so the way we put it together, we very, very quickly, as soon as everything's wrapped up, we grab everyone's iPads, take all the stuff off them and edit the films together into one piece, and then we sit them all down and they have their premiere. Depending on the company, sometimes there's a red carpet, sometimes we've got popcorn, and they all sit back and we watch it projected on a big screen. And it's always so entertaining to see the fruits of people's work that afternoon. It's always hilarious. People always laugh a lot at their own work when they go, oh, it's not as good as we thought it was going to be, or they go, oh, it worked really well, but they can see the creativity of all their friends as well. It's really, really interesting. I've been doing this quite a lot over the last 4 or 5 years, and it never fails. I've done many, many other types of team building exercises in the corporate field, which you always get people at the back scrolling on their phones and, oh boy, there's so much going on with it. I wish we were at home. I'd rather spend the day in the office. I've got so much to do in my inbox. But actually this one, it brings people together, and it really invites the kind of engagement which is quite rare at that sort of thing. It's really, really successful. So I'm quite looking forward to it, except it's the 23rd of December. And that means it's right on top of Christmas, and we've got a house to clean and dinner to prepare. That's all going to happen on Christmas Eve. The downside of doing it is I only agreed to do the job a couple of days ago because I had originally said I wasn't going to be available for it, because with blended families going on again, so for the last 10 years or so, it's been 1 year at my sister's where I and Ben go there for Christmas Day, and then we alternate, and the next Christmas Ben and I would be with his family. And sometimes we've been lucky enough to be able to invite Ben's parents, and sometimes Edward as well, up to join us for Christmas, which is lovely. And sometimes Christmas Days with my family or Christmas Days with Ben's. So this year, although I'm going to get a chance to be with both sides because they're both coming here, it means my sister, who is coming, wouldn't get the chance to be with her children, and that's not great for her. So what we've done in the past is, on the year off, Sam has hosted what we call Fake Christmas on the 23rd of December. And it becomes a real Christmas. So we have a proper dinner and we do the presents, and there's loads of family there. It's great, it's really nice. It means I can do it twice and be in two places at two different times, but it feels like, you're not missing out. So this year she's doing Fake Christmas as well, so that she can have Christmas with her family, her lower family, not status, as in her descendants, her children. That's the word, children. Ben and I were going to be going up. We would have been going up today because today is Sam's birthday, obviously, and it's nice to go from seeing her on her birthday into Fake Christmas, travel home on the 24th. Probably actually would have travelled home on the 23rd anyway, but then Lisa said to me, Nathan, we're really struggling. We can't find anyone to do the gig on the 23rd. Do you know anyone? Bless her, knowing that I had already said I couldn't do it, she didn't put pressure on me. And I said, Lisa's a very, very special friend, and we've been through some tough times together. So I owe her and Mark more than just friendship, and they've bailed me out of a few sticky situations in the past. And I said, listen, I just can't let you struggle. I will very happily do it. But then I had to make the rather uncomfortable and awkward phone calls to the various members of my family that I wouldn't then be seeing. You see, Christmas is a time for family, loving, cherishing, and togetherness and guilt. There doesn't seem any way around it. As life becomes more complicated, as families become more, not fractured, more complex, and more inclusive actually, it's hard to try and tick all the boxes, isn't it? What are you going to be doing for your festive season? Are you celebrating Christmas? Are you, it's the first day of Hanukkah today, so I don't know if I show, I'll bring the picture in here. This is mine and Ben's Advent crown. We went smuggling, I was going to say. We go smuggling for things. We went foraging in Hampstead Heath for all the greenery and the berries and things like that a couple of weekends ago for the first Advent. Oh, his shiny forehead, sorry about that. It's looking a bit tatty now. Things are drying up a little bit, but it's almost done its job. Ben, being Jewish, wanted to include Jewish elements in the very Christian Advent crown, and I'm not even a Christian. I mean, I was brought up in a Christian household, going to Church of England and stuff, but I don't have a religious faith at all. But while I don't have religion or a religious or spiritual faith, I do have a respect for tradition and heritage, and I like a lot of the traditions that go with Christmas, like family and turkey and Yule log and holly and Christmas trees and all of those things. So we make the Advent crown, but rather than just the 4 red candles around the outside, can you see in the centre there's a big cluster, there's 8 Hanukkah candles. It's going to be an inferno when they're all lit together, and they'll just melt each other in seconds. So today, I think, is the first day of Hanukkah. We're going to light a Hanukkah candle this evening as soon as I finish doing this while the editing's going on. And that's going to be really nice. So that's enough, isn't it? That's enough. So, shall we talk about some knitting? There's one very, very special piece of knitting that I want to talk about in a moment. I'll just do a quick catch-up. There's not a lot actually on my knitting. I've got a few languishing projects which I don't feel are current. I will go back to them at some point, but there's nothing that I'm currently working on other than this bad boy here, which I know you've all seen, but it's really coming along nicely. I haven't had much time to work on it a lot recently, which has been annoying. The needles clacking on the floor, sorry about that. But it's you know, it's getting some good length now. It's twice the height from waist around shoulders, and I mean, how tall is it? I don't know. Let me stand up and see. I'll place it on the floor, and that's laying on the floor, and it currently comes up to there. So that's probably what, 4.5 feet. I'm 6 foot tall. Maybe that's 18 inches. I don't know. Yeah, approaching 5 feet long, and it's really thick and wide. So that's the beauty of it. It's going to be a really snuggly scarf. Some of my other scarves are much narrower, but this one, just because I wanted more than 2 squares per row, but I didn't want the squares to be tiny. I wanted them to be like a big chunk of each texture, so you would get the full impact of it rather than just being sort of like a jumbled mess. So you really can see the delineation between them all. And I'm really very, very happy with it. That's what I would call the yellow side. And that's the side that's a little bit more green. It's not really, I mean, of course it's 50-50, but it's just one side is edged with yellow on one, and that's edged with green. It kind of works. One gives the impression anyway, but it's lovely. It's really, really snugly warm. It's made with BFL from the Uncommon Thread in DK weight, and it's a real joy to knit. It's a real joy. I've had a few people actually comment on the train when I knit on the tube on the way in and out of town, and people who said, oh, it's really lovely. And a couple of questions have been interesting. People have said to me, are you knitting separate squares and sewing them together? Which is a perfectly valid question, really, if you don't understand the processes here. I'm just trying to put this somewhere where it's not going to clack on the floor. If you don't understand the processes, but it's really not. Obviously, it's knitted in one, one row at a time, and you work your way all across. But look at all those textures. I know you've seen it before, but I hope you're happy to see it again, because I'm ridiculously in love with it. I don't have a name for it yet. There's it features quite heavily this very unusual texture, which you may or may not have heard me talking about before, which is sort of banging the camera, sorry. There, and if I show you one of the squares, which is made of the same texture there, that's a very, very unusual texture in knitting at all, in double knitting certainly. Is that going to focus? Let me give you that. No, there you go. It's, now I've boinged the camera, you're probably getting very seasick, I do apologise. It's sort of, I call it Chris stitch. It's a kind of, I've been really looking at it to try and decipher exactly what I think it is that's going on there. Of course I know how to do it, but what it's actually achieving. What it's doing, it's a bit like linen stitch. It's almost like a double knitted linen stitch. Linen stitch is not reversible. It's nice on both sides, but they're different. Whereas this is the same on both sides. But it's like, you know, with linen stitch, one side is all the knits and one side is, so you've got essentially akin to a stocking stitch with knits on one side and pearls on the other. The rows of yellow that you can see, they alternate. It's bad lighting. The rows of yellow there, they alternate as you work up the columns between a knit and a pearl and a knit and a pearl. But the pearl bumps kind of get slightly hidden. It's a sort of like a garter stitch, linen stitch, double knitting combo. It's very easy to do. It's absolutely no different from doing ordinary double knitting. It's just that you pearl the stitches you would ordinarily knit and knit the stitches you would ordinarily pearl. So the mechanics of doing it are exactly the same. It's just kind of like one stitch offset rather than one pair of stitches. It's really easy and it's hard to explain. In double knitting, let me go back to the basics. In double knitting, for those of you who have never done any of it before, you work the stitches in pairs and you knit the first stitch with yarn A, you bring the yarns to the front and then you pearl the second stitch of the pair with yarn B. And that will give you a fabric which shows a stocking stitch on both sides, which would look like this yellow square here, which on the back is green. So the reason why it looks like stocking stitch on both sides, even though half of the stitches have been pearled, is because the first stitch of every pair gives you the stitch for the side of the fabric that faces you as you're working on it. And the second stitch of the pair gives you the stitch which shows up on the back here. So if I knit the first stitch of the pair, it looks at me as a knit stitch, presents itself to me as a knit stitch, and I pearl the second stitch of the pair, that's going to present outwards on that side as a knit stitch, because a knit stitch is the back of the pearl stitch. So are you with me on that? So with double knitting, you always knit, pearl, knit, pearl, knit, pearl, if you want stocking stitch on both sides. So all you need to do then, when you do this, is every other row, instead of knit, pearl, knit, pearl, knit, pearl, you just pearl, pearl, knit, pearl, knit, pearl, knit. It is that simple. So once you're in the flow of it, it feels like your hand's doing exactly the same mechanics. You're just half a pair offset, and it gives you this lovely, lovely technique. It's a really nice texture. It's really dense. It's really flat. If you can see. If you can see here, it bulges out a little bit. Ignore that tail there, that's just what I changed balls from one finish one to one. Can you see it's definitely wider. It's wider than its cousin above. This is ordinary double knitting here, and it goes balloons out. And it's because it's the two sides of the fabric are really flat. You can't separate it. The way double knitting, where you've got no colour changes, you can pull it apart and you've made a little bag. Can you see that? Whereas you can't all the two sides are completely woven in together. I don't know what to call it really. It's a woven double knitted stitch. It's an interlocked double knitted stitch. I call it Chris stitch, and there's a very good reason for that. A couple of times in my classes when I've been teaching beginners double knitting, a couple of people have kind of misinterpreted a little bit or misunderstood something about when you turn the work over, the colours reverse, because if you're working on the yellow side, on that scarf for example, when you turn it over then you'll work on the green side, so you switch the colours over. And a couple of people have thought that they have to switch everything over, so where they were doing knit, pearl, now they think they have to do pearl, knit. And so some people have come to that, I say accidentally, but sort of instinctively done that. And the first time I ever saw it, the lady who said, "I don't think mine looks the same as everybody else's," she said a couple rows in, and I went to her end of the table. I said, no, it's not. And it was one of the first classes I'd ever taught, and I didn't know the technique as well as I do now, and I had no idea what she'd done. I was like, didn't know how to fix it, so I just watched her and said, okay, well, you just need to make sure you always knit the first stitch of the pair. But her name was Chris. It's that simple. So I'm calling it Chris Stitch, and I have done ever since, because I've seen it several times in classes over the years since then. That was probably 5 years ago now. And I always tell people, I always think of Chris when I tell people this story, because I am literally naming the stitch after. I don't know if it already exists and already has another name. I've not seen it in any patterns, and there's not that much double knitting stuff out there, really. It's not as if, I mean, in knitting there's new little things or unusual techniques could be hidden very easily in the behemoth of patterns which is out there. But with double knitting, there's not that much, so I'd be surprised if I hadn't seen it. But then someone may have just done it once and stuck a project up and not really designed anything or released it, or how would I know? But it's Chris Stitch as far as I'm concerned, and I love it. I really, really do. I think it gives this lovely flat border. The fact that it is locked together, it really edges the scarf really nicely. So I started the scarf with it. You can see there it's all around the top and down both sides, and I'll end the scarf with it at the end. I don't know how much longer the scarf will be. I bought two 200-gram skeins of each colour, the yellow and the green. I'm on the second ball of each now, but look, I've still got this much left. It's quite a lot, probably about 50 grams left. So if I've done 4.5 feet now, and that's maybe I'll make it to 6 feet. Lovely. I love a 6 foot scarf. I mean, my dither scarf's about 8 feet long. I love a long scarf, and I think 6. I would have been happy with this one because it's so thick. Had it not been able to, sorry, I banged the camera again. Had it not been able to be quite that wide, had it not been able to be very, very long, because it's nice and thick and snuggly anyway, and wide, but it looks like it's going to go a lot further than I anticipated. I'm really happy about that. That is the only thing currently on my needles. It's what I need. It's very nice, and I enjoy doing it thoroughly. And the reason it's the only thing on my needles is because Hampton Court, my enormous blue and green peacock affair, is finally finished. Now, I know if any of you follow me on Instagram, you'll know this already, because I was Instagramming the damn out of it. And it's been getting a lot of love and likes and comments on Instagram, which is great. Thank you so, so much for it. I am so pleased to unveil the first actual visible showing, movement-wise, on video anywhere, of the Hampton Court shawl. It's huge. It's just, there you go, enormous. Let's just allow it to take up the entire screen. So I'll sit back here for a bit, and I'll try and show it to you in all of its magnificent size. It's huge. I mean, it really is huge. There you go. Is that all? I love it so much. So the thing that I was agonising about with this shawl was how I was going to finish it, because this pattern, these diamond shapes, these were just fanning out, and the bigger it got, it was very easy, because all I was doing was adding, just as I was working across here, I would just add the simple sequence of blue, green, both, blue, green, both as you went along, I would just add another strip. And I think, how am I going to end it? I agonised over it for weeks and weeks and weeks as I realised I was still knitting. I still had plenty of yarn left, but I knew I was approaching the end, and I was really, really struggling with what I wanted it to look like aesthetically. At first, I thought I wanted to edge shape the bottom edge of it to go with the shape of the, I call them feathers, but the leaf design, so that the edge of the shawl would have followed sort of this zigzag line like that. Or maybe I thought if I wanted to be really, hang on, it's really heavy. If I really wanted to be a bit more bold with that idea, sort of doing a double size zigzag, so like two feathers by two feathers. Oh, wait, the thing's gone again. Going out to sleep, I can't bother to fix it now. Too far in. With the double zigzag, and then it was just becoming impossible. I gave it a go when I got to that point, and I thought, how am I going to, because it means doing bits in sections, and while I could easily see how it was possible to do it, writing something into a pattern for other people to do is not the same as what you know you can do yourself. And that's not in any way to patronise somebody else's abilities or to self-aggrandise my own. It's not that at all. It's the opposite. It's trying to put what my brain instinctively knows into words that I know somebody else would be able to understand without ambiguity. That's the problem with knitting. Usually knitting is very linear, and you just work across the rows or in the round, whatever, and you just go from one stitch to the other. It's when you start to go off-piste from the linear that the possibility for misinterpretation of your instructions creeps in very, very big. And I didn't want people to have put in this much work over this many months. I've been working on this since June, over this many months, to struggle at the end and potentially mess it up because I couldn't write it succinctly and clearly enough. And it was really, really hard, because I thought, well, am I then compromising the design that I want for usability? And I don't like to do that. Ben is always saying to me, Nathan, when are you going to make something simple that everyone can make? I say, I have done, they just don't know it yet. But I do understand that there is a payoff between something which is, yes, beautiful, but it also has to be makeable. And it's all very well to say, well, I can make these one-off statement pieces. It's great. They'll always be the only one in the world, and they'll be in some knitting museum somewhere when I'm gone. But I can't eat from that. I do have to make a living. I have to think I don't want to be sort of selling out creatively for the sake of commercial success. That's not what I'm about at all. But I do want, I enjoy this shawl so much. I enjoyed making it. I wanted other people to feel confident about making it as well. It's not actually that difficult. So eventually I thought, right, I am going to do a straight edge shawl. I'm not going to do these fiddly little bits. But my design goes like that. And then so if I'm going to a straight edge, I'm going to be cutting across half a feather. It's like, no. So it needed something else. And I tried lots and lots of different things. I thought maybe like a little lace border. I thought applied lace border, not on this many stitches. I actually haven't counted how many stitches there were. I will find out for you, and I will place it here. It's that many, it's a lot. The last row I knitted had that many stitches in it. So I wanted to do something that gave an illusion of like visibly a different border. So it really gave a cadence to the shawl. So the design of the shawl flows very nicely, and it develops, it grows, but I wanted it, as the eye goes down those V-shapes, sort of stripes, as it goes downwards through the shawl, I wanted the eye to go, and we're done, without going, oh, beautiful, what? You don't want to shock the eye necessarily, you don't want to jar the eye, you want to tie everything together and give visible clues that make sense of the piece, if that makes sense at all. my brain thinks like that. That's how I think when I'm trying to think of a design. I like it to be not just, oh, because I've got to end the shawl, I'll just stop. No, I want it to be sort of designing something with flow. And so hopefully you'll agree with me that I've managed to do it quite nicely. I put a little bit of lace at the edge. There's not really any lace throughout the shawl. It is, as you can see, there's no hole. It's not there. There is a little. Oh God, sorry. Don't know what that is. There are some at the edges because I've used yarn overs to increase at the side and down the spine as well. So you can see my face through that. Can you? Yeah, you can see that. You can see that. So down here and down here, there are some holes, but I wouldn't really call that lacework. I wouldn't really call this lacework either, but there's more holes in a smaller surface area space. So this is what the edge looks like. So the green side. It's really unwieldy. So here we are. So from what I call the feathers, the eyes of the peacock feather, I've actually given a proper feathered edge effect. Can you see that? And obviously you can see the holes, and also the columns of stitches skew off into diagonals at this point, and I really like this. So the columns of stitches are ebbing and flowing, and there's movement throughout it. And then at the end, that's what you get. That's the bottom center. The bottom center of the screen there is the bottom center of the shawl. And it works really, really nicely. Of course, on the other side, those feathers, sorry, there's a wire to plug in, I keep banging it. On the other side, those feathers are of course blue with green spines. Lovely. And the whole thing is finished off with, it's a long Kitchener graft, sharp, deal with it. It's a long Kitchener graft. I don't mind Kitchener stitch, I really enjoy it. And the one needle Kitchener for double stitching is so easy. Head to my YouTube channel. Oh, you're there already. Just check after you finish this, watch my one needle Kitchener graft tutorial. It's really super easy. So it's just, it did present some problems of its own though. The last row of stitches, whenever I've done this before, the one that grafted something together, the entire row at the end has always been one single colour. So on Genesis, which is here, the last row is bordered, this orange, and because running down the sides of it, I had orange anyway, so this entire row is orange on that side. Obviously it's green on the other, but on one side it's all one colour. That's not true with this boy. Because of the way the got a little snag there. What's that? Oh, it's the end popping out. I'll snip that off. Because of the way it's bordered, can you see this is a little bit? I've got an ingrowing toenail. I think it's only come up this last couple of days. It's agony, and I just put my weight on it. So this blue section here is on the mostly green side. So this is the edge coming down here. So we've got 5 columns of stitches there, which are blue at the end, and then these are green. I mean, I ignored these. This is just 5. It's mostly green. And on the other side, of course, it's green down this side here with the snippable tail, and then that's on the blue feather side. So I had to find a way of changing the colour of my graft from green to blue. Can you see how it's done? Look at that. It's blue on one side here and green on that side, but then here it switches between green on that side, blue on that side. It took a lot of brain work, a lot of failed attempts, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of brain racking, and I was about to admit defeat. I could not work it out. I could not work it out at all. I had started working. I don't really understand how Kitchener works. I do, but where the set of movements that you do is not like a complete stitch. So if I wanted to complete one stitch and then finish at that point, so I could come back to it with a different colour, I wasn't really sure. My brain, for some reason, just couldn't work out at what point in the sequence of Kitchener stitches steps do you cease, because that will end up in a completed stitch. It's really hard to tell as you're working it through. And I was trying to get on the big piece. So what I was planning to do was, I have to go backtrack. With double knitting, if you're grafting the edge together, I think I might have spoken about this before, but if you're grafting the edges together, what you want the two sides to be is the same length. Otherwise you can get one side is longer than the other like that, which you don't want. Because Kitchener stitch creates another row of stitches, but only on one side of the fabric. So if I've got my finite number of rows there, and I create another row on this side, they're offset. I didn't want that. Obviously you don't want that. Perfectionist, symmetry, double knitting, that's what double knitting is all about, symmetry. So in order to do this, what you do first of all is you build up a row of purl stitches across the back by slipping the knit stitch with the yarn behind it, doing the purl stitch, moving the yarn, slipping the next one, and you build up the extra row on one side, and then you build it up on the second side by doing the Kitchener graft, and that's how you keep the two sides together. So changing colours, therefore, is really hard, because unlike normal double knitting, where you're using two yarns at the same time, you can just switch over as you go. With this, I was thinking build up purl stitches, and then I've got to start building up purl stitches in the other colour, but the other yarn's over there. So I know I could go back to the beginning. So build up my 5 purl stitches at the back, drop that yarn, go back to the beginning, pick up the other one, do the Kitchener stitch through those 5 stitches, swap the yarns over, then start building up the stitches at the back with the other colour, slip them back, and then do the Kitchener graft. Ugh! Again, it was something I could have done, but to try and convey and tutorialise and put that into instructions for everybody else to do, I just couldn't work out at what point I could fudge it, and my shawl would be finished and done how I wanted it. And I was almost in tears one night. I was sitting here. I was like, I can't write it down, and I can't keep track of what I've done. It's too big. And I thought, okay, bigger picture. When something seems insurmountable, simplify. Always, always, always simplify. If something feels too complicated, it probably is. And simplifying doesn't mean compromising at all. It just means strip out all the stuff you don't need. And I started, I thought, well, I'm going to do a little swatch. 15 pairs of stitches wide, and we'll see how we go. And this is the swatch. So this is essentially a tiny version of the shawl. So this is my border, this is the body of the shawl, that's the border on the other side. So I've got where I needed to switch colours. And look. It's a bit lumpy bumpy in terms of tension, but you can clearly see it's red this side and purple this side. It's purple this side, down to the same point, and red that side. The light bulb moment, bearing in mind that I've been battling with my brain to try and work this out for a very, very long time. Weeks, literally weeks. The light bulb moment didn't come from any kind of process of thought working out at all. It was one of those very rare moments where you just go, oh, it's that. And I don't know how I got that. I just got the idea. I thought suddenly, okay, well, if I'm building up an extra column of stitches at the back first, why do they need to be on the back? If I can build up some columns of stitches on the... So here we go. So see my fingers there? If I build up the column of stitches there, I need to do the Kitchener graft to match it, right? If I build up the column of stitches there, then I need to do the Kitchener graft there to match it. But then I thought, if I build up the column of stitches here for some stitches with the pearls, and then switch with the same yarn and just slip another stitch and then start building up the knits, I'll have my extra column of stitches sometimes on the back and sometimes on the front, sometimes on the back, sometimes on the front, without ever touching the other yarn. And then I thought, well, if I then just do the Kitchener graft, it's because knitting finds its own tension, it finds its own level, like water. It's not going to be lumpy bumpy. What it'll do is, where it's filling a gap on the front on one side, when suddenly the gap's not on the front, it's on the back, the Kitchener row will just alternate, it'll just do it. And I thought, well, let's try it. It sounds kind of improbable, and I hope you're still with me. It sounds improbable, but it really, really works. So what I did with this, I forget which colour I used first, but for example, let's say I was working with the purple to start with. As you're looking at this, the purple is on the back here, right? So let's start. So if I were knitting it, I'd be starting knitting here, wouldn't I? So you're knitting this, and the purple is on the back. So with the purple yarn, I slipped all the knit stitches and purled all the purl stitches until I got to this point. And then I slipped all the purl stitches and worked all the knit stitches, building up my extra row here in purple on the front, which you can see. And then I went back to slipping the knits and purling the purple, which built it up on the back there. And then I thought, right, let's just see. So all of the stitches in purple are done. I'm hoping that one extra row of Kitchener will just, it'll just fall into place, either front or back, where it needs to go. So I did an ordinary Kitchener stitch. I did nothing different. It's ordinary Kitchener graft all the way across from one side to the other using the red. And it falls into place exactly how it should. I was slightly amazed. It was almost like the answer was given to me by someone else and I didn't quite trust them. But I was thinking, like, logically it should work, but kind of another kind of logic, the logic of every day, makes you think, it's not going to know where to go. It just does, and it works brilliantly. It really, really does. So now changing colour in a Kitchener graft is absolutely no problem at all. I will employ this technique again. And here you can see, here we are. So I've got me green on one side here and the blue underneath, and the blue on the top this time and the green on the other side there, all the way across. I haven't blocked this yet. There's been a lot of discussion on one of my posts about it, where I invited people to give me their opinions. I don't block double knitting. I mean, really, it's this flat. It doesn't curl. It's just going to lie there, and it's so heavy anyway. God, it's a hug. I mean, this shawl is pretty. It can completely hide me. I do love it. It's really warm. But the edges here, as you can see, try and hold it there, they do actually want to, they want to come to little points. There's enough, because of the way the shaping works, there, if I pull it out a little bit, just in practice, you can see it wants to go into little points here and here and here, every other one. And I want to accentuate that. I don't want to compromise the squidge and the squish, however, of the shawl, because the beauty of it is how luxurious it feels. It really is the most comforting thing to wear. It's heavy. There's 1 kilogram of yarn in that. That's good quality yarn as well. That's the Fibre Company's Terra base, which is merino and baby alpaca, 40% each, and 20% silk. So we get that lovely sheen, that lovely luster that catches the light. Look at that, beautiful. And it's a single ply, which I don't normally use at all. I usually like a higher twist, more structured yarn for double knitting to keep nice crisp delineation between the colours. But I figured, because I wasn't using blocks and squares to make my shapes, the stitches were curving around the shapes I wanted them to make. I figured I could get away with using a sort of fuzzier yarn, so it will bloom a lot. But I didn't want to lose any of that, because the joy of what this is, it was a deliberate attempt to show people that thick knitting isn't always bulky and clumsy. It can still be, it feels delicate and beautiful. And yet this is a worsted weight yarn doubled up. It's really, really warm. I wanted to keep that as part of its USP, really. It's part of its point. But I do want to pull out those shapes. So what I have decided to do, I haven't got around to it yet, it's not going to happen this side of Christmas, clearly. What I have decided to do is I'm going to just moisten, spray, and then steam block and pin out the edges, but only the edges. I'm going to do literally the bottom 2 inches, just that feathered section, and then I can pin those out spray with a little bit of water and let that sort of moisten in, and then with a thin towel or piece of cloth, blast it with the steam from the iron, and hopefully set those points much more in an accentuated way. I think it'll just add another level of sort of flyaway delicacy to it. What's nice about it, there does seem to be a little bit more fabric in the end. It sort of wants to flare and you see ruffle a little bit at the edges there all by itself, and I think that's nice as well. I think those points will pull that out and give a bit more weight to that. Weight to it as in more impact to that. It'll look more delicate, I hope. I'm in love with it. I'm really in love with it. So thank you to everybody who has commented on that. Overwhelmingly, that was people's thoughts. Some people would have done very different things. Some people say block it. Some people say just leave it as it is. I could. I think I'm tempted because I'm lazy. I think actually though, I've put so much time and work and many, many hours, so much thought has gone into this. Hang on. It's quicker now. Is that working? Yeah. So much thought and care and time and energy and effort has gone into it. I think it's worth taking a little bit more time to give it a really, really lovely finish. It's rustic and handmade at the moment, but to really give it a lovely, defined edge will just set it off exactly how it should. It deserves it, I think. It deserves the extra bit of care from me. I've never seen blocked anything in my life. It's rather a statement piece to start experimenting on, but I have faith in the technique that people have suggested, and that's what I shall do. So I look forward to seeing this one more time, at least as the hopefully. I'm terrified that what I'll be showing you will be this matted, felted ball of hell. Imagine. It's like nearly £300 of yarn and 6 months of work. Can you imagine? I just ruined it all. But there, I guess, is where there's a lot to be said for just doing the ends, because if I do screw up the ends, at least I can just rip those off by 2 more balls of yarn and then re-knit the end. It won't all be lost. It will be fine. Won't it? Please tell me it will be fine. I'm going to sign off now. We are over the hour and I do want to keep these down nowadays. But really importantly, this will be my last podcast in 2019. The next time I talk to you will be from the Roaring Twenties. And I need to put this year to bed. To everyone who's watching this, who is a friend and a supporter, thank you so, so much. It's what I've experienced this year, this last 6 months, has been more brutal than it should have been. I'm aware now that a lot of that has been my reactions to what's been happening, as well as what's been happening itself. I don't wish anybody to experience what I've gone through. I think cancel culture is an abhorrence. And I wish with all my heart that people overall could not be so quick to jump to outrage. I think we are addicted to outrage as a society at the moment, and I don't blame anybody individually for that. We have a society and a culture that is geared that way, and social media gives a platform to that aspect of people's psyche. And thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying here, and to all of you newcomers who have recently become aware of me as a result of all of this, thank you. Thank you for coming to see for yourselves and learn by my words and deeds rather than by the gossip and lies of people around me. Thank you. that note, let's get reflective in another way. Christmas is a time for togetherness. It's a time for, I say Christmas, I know in America we tend to be more inclusive with that over there. So the holiday season, whether it's Hanukkah, whether it's whatever you're celebrating, I'm sure there are others at this time of year that I'm not aware of, but it's a time for family. It's a time for togetherness. It's in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the coldest part of the year. It's a time for huddling together. So remember what's really important in life, because your friends, who are the family you choose, and your family, who are the family you get given, are the most important things in the world. And you can wrap them up in knitted goods, but it matters so much more to wrap them up in love. Let's do that. I wish you a wonderful Christmas and a brilliant end to 2019, whatever it has brought to you so far. And I genuinely hope that 2020, gosh, it sounds so futuristic, is the best year of your life so far. Thank you so much. It's lovely to have you spend a little bit of your day with me. Thank you for doing that. And I look forward to seeing you in the roaring 20s. So without further ado, while it is true that this podcast, and indeed, thankfully, this year, is finally a finished object, remember, life is a work in progress. Just take it one stitch at a time. And until next time, farewell. Hello, it's me again. Don't worry, the podcast really is over. I've just popped in, however, to say if you enjoyed it and you want to make sure you never miss another episode, why not click on this handy little subscribe button right here. Don't say I never do anything for you. Or if you're worried that you might have missed out on some really fun stuff from previous episodes, I've got a playlist link for you here, which has got all of the previous Sockmatician podcast episodes on it, so you never need to feel out of the loop again. Bye for now.